There was a book sitting on my windowsill that hadn't been there before. It was leaning at an angle, a revolver on the cover, with a paper card tucked inside it. I picked it up and read the note. It was signed, simply, Phone. I didn't understand what that meant yet, but I was about to. Let me take you back to how this started. I used to live on the ground floor of an old building in a pretty nice part of the city. Nice streets, nice neighbors, old architecture. The kind of block where you feel safe walking home at night. The building itself was another story, constantly needing work, owned by a family who'd sooner send their grandfather over with a caulk gun than call an actual professional. I was working nights at the time, a custodian at a government facility. The pay was decent, the workload was manageable. But the disrespect wore me down. I hadn't quit yet, but I was close. The schedule meant I slept late, usually not up until close to 11. That detail mattered more than I realized, because my landlady had a habit of giving out my phone number to anyone who needed access to the building, since I was on the ground floor right next to the entrance. Illegal, by the way. Tenants don't work for the building owners. But that's a separate argument. She'd told me the night before that someone might be calling to get in. Nobody called, nobody knocked, so I figured they'd gotten inside on their own or rescheduled. I was wrong about that assumption. I was woken up that morning by the sound of men straining under heavy equipment in the narrow alleyway beside the building. It ran alongside the exterior of my bedroom window. A tight passage that doubled as a trash corridor and led to a small patio at the back. The window had a metal air conditioning cage bolted over it, and I'd stacked several of my outdoor plants on and around it. Ferns. A bromeliad. Things I'd collected carefully. I scrambled out of my loft bed and down the ladder to move them before the workers knocked something over. I was grabbing my third fern when a group of them came back up the alleyway. I was still in my pajamas, skimpy ones. I was caught completely off guard, holding plants, barely dressed, pressed up against the side of my own building. I got approached by men with that kind of energy almost every day, and it was honestly one of the reasons I'd taken the night shift in the first place. The coveralls, the anonymity, being left alone. Getting caught like this felt humiliating. A few of them stared. I apologized quickly. Told them I just wanted to get my plants out of their way. One or two said it was no problem. One said something like, "We'd never let anything happen." I nodded, kept my eyes down, and started handing plants through the bars of the AC cage onto the narrow ledge inside my bedroom window. I didn't think about it at the time, but I'd just told them exactly which room was mine. Not just that I lived in the building. Not just that I was on the ground floor. I'd pointed to the specific window, shown them the side entrance, made it plain. They spent the day on the roof, done by nightfall. Nothing strange happened. I went to bed and barely gave it another thought. 2 days later, I was woken up early by a phone call. Area code matched my city, no spam flag. I answered, thinking it might be another building access call from someone who needed in. The voice on the other end was slurring. A man, asking for someone. Frank. Or maybe Fan. I couldn't make it out clearly. He had a strong accent and his words were running together. I asked him to repeat himself several times before I finally told him he had the wrong number and hung up. I went back to sleep. A while later, I heard noise coming from the alleyway. I was still half asleep and figured it was probably something to do with the neighboring building. We shared that corridor. I didn't connect it to anything. I turned over. Then I heard a bang and a crash from somewhere in the interior hallway. I startled awake for a moment, heard nothing more, fell back asleep. When I finally got up around 10:30, I went to check on the shared washing machine in the basement. The hallway felt different before I even reached the stairs. Darker. I looked up and saw that one of the wall sconces had been disassembled. No bulb, just the empty fixture. There was broken glass on the floor beneath it. I was still groggy. I registered it, but didn't fully process it. What finally pulled me out of my fog was the basement. The light down there didn't turn on either. That basement was not a place I liked to be under any circumstances. Long, low-ceilinged, full of clutter from multiple rental properties. The kind of place where you had to turn your back on a long stretch of darkness to use the washer and dryer. Black-footed sack spiders. Cobwebs across every corner. I would not go down there without light. I won't. I stood at the top of the stairs for a moment, turned around and noticed something else. The owner's vacuum cleaner, which was usually kept near the side entrance to the building, was gone. I went back to my room. That's when I saw the book on the windowsill. I picked it up. A book with a revolver on the cover. The card tucked inside said something about wanting to give it to me, and it was signed, Phone. I stood there holding it, and the morning started assembling itself differently in my head. The early call from the slurring man, the noise in the alleyway, the bang in the hallway, the missing bulb in the sconce, the broken glass, the light that didn't work in the basement, the vacuum that wasn't where it belonged. And now this. On my windowsill, inside my window. I texted a photo of it immediately to my upstairs neighbor. I'll call her Venessa. She lived on the 3rd floor, and the two of us had bonded early on over our shared discomfort with that basement. She replied with, "Hold on," and within seconds I heard her knocking on my door. She walked in, and her face said everything before she did. I tried to ease the tension a little by pointing out the broken sconce in the hallway. That's when she told me what had happened to her that morning. She'd gone down to the basement early before anyone else was up to use the laundry. The light hadn't worked for her either. She'd started down the stairs anyway and stopped. She thought she heard something, or sensed it. She called out into the dark, "Hello?" She was expecting the voice of one of our other neighbors. 3 women and one of the men in the building. What she heard was a man, a deep voice, with an accent, telling her he was just there to fix the light, and she said she could barely understand him, because he was slurring his words. Venessa turned around and ran back up the stairs. She'd called down again about an hour later. No answer. But she hadn't gone back down alone, and she needed to know if he was still there. That's why she'd come to me. I had 2 headlamps from work and a flashlight. We went down together, holding on to each other, shouting into the dark ahead of us as we descended. What we found, someone had broken the light bulb in the socket, not just removed it, broken it. They'd brought the vacuum down, seemingly to clean up the glass, and then abandoned it, and a container of powdered laundry detergent had been taken from near the machines. There was a trail of it, dusted across the steps and into the hallway in several spots. He had been in our basement while we were sleeping. He'd broken the light, tried to clean it up, stolen detergent for some reason, and left a book on my windowsill with a note signed, "Phone." We went to our only male neighbor. He thought we were being dramatic. We contacted our landlady and told her someone had called me before coming inside. She blamed us for leaving the side door unlocked. I asked her to please check with the roofing company to verify whether the number that had called me that morning belonged to anyone on their crew. She refused, flat out, said she had a long-standing relationship with the company, as if that answered anything. The man with the slurring voice and the wrong number and the basement had apparently just walked in. Nobody ever figured out who he was. The landlady didn't investigate. The male neighbor stayed unbothered. Venessa and I were left with what we'd found and no real explanation for any of it. I moved out eventually. This was well over a year before I wrote any of this down, and I no longer live there. The phone I had at the time has been replaced. The laptop where I'd saved the photo of the book and the note, replaced. I can't show you the evidence, but I know what I held in my hands. What I keep coming back to is this. 2 days before the phone call, I had stood in that alleyway in my pajamas and handed ferns through the bars of my own bedroom window. I'd pointed directly at my room. I'd shown a group of strangers, including at least one who was already watching, exactly where I slept. And I still don't know if one of them came back. The timing fits. The slurred speech matched. The call came from a local number. The man in the basement was slurring too, according to Venessa. He knew which building to come to. He found my window. I just don't know why. I've thought about the ring cameras on the building across the street, whether the footage still exists, whether it ever would have shown anything. I'll never know. I didn't think to ask in time, and the window for that passed a long time ago. There's something that stays with you about the moments you didn't process in time. I heard the bang in the hallway. I registered the broken sconce. I noticed the vacuum was missing. Each one by itself was easy to dismiss. Groggy, tired, not connecting the dots. But they were dots. The ground floor felt safe because the neighborhood was safe. But the ground floor is exactly what it sounds like. It's at the bottom. It's the first thing a door opens to. It's the window level with the alleyway, the one a stranger already watched you climb through. I got lucky in the way that's hardest to feel grateful for, the kind where you don't actually know what you were lucky to avoid. He left a book. He stole some detergent. He broke some glass and then tried to clean it up. And I never saw his face. But Venessa heard his voice in the dark at the bottom of those stairs. And that's the part I can't let go of. If this one left you with that feeling, the one where you're replaying your own morning routine and wondering what you've already walked past, drop it in the comments. I read them all. If you want to make sure you're here for the next one, subscribe. And if this story deserved your time, a like helps someone else find it.